wartime is well enough known to millions of my fellow countrymen, but the scene that presented itself to my astonished eyes as I alighted at the Gare de l'Est on the morning of June 6, 1918, merits a description. That date, it will be remembered, marked probably the lowest ebb in the spirits of the Parisian populace. The Germans were along the Marne, and but 30 miles from the capital. Chateau Thierry was in their hands. The villagers in that vicinity, who had braved 4 years of adjacent warfare, were now swept away from their homes. Thousands of these poor refugees were arriving in Paris on the morning I entered it. Used as I was to the various horrors of war, there was a terror in the countenances of these homeless people that made a new impression upon me. Old women, young women, all clothed in wretched garments and disheveled headgear, wandered blindly through the streets adjoining the stations, with swarms of crying children clinging to their skirts. Pathetic as this scene was, it had its comic features in the extraordinary articles that these fleeing peasants had chosen to carry with them. Umbrellas seemed to be the most precious thing that they had tried to save. A little bundle, probably containing a loaf of bread and a few articles of clothing, was carried by each woman. The children were loaded down with such strange treasures as axes, parrot cages, wooden buckets, and farm implements. The few old men who accompanied them hobbled along empty-handed, with the utmost patience and abandon. Evidently the whole care of the migration was left to the energetic women of France. They had all been walking for many miles. This was very evident. Their clothing was dusty, worn, and crumpled. Their faces were pinched and wretched, and an indescribable look of misery and suffering filled every face. The pathos of this scene will never leave my memory. And here I desire to express my appreciation of the magnificent work of the American Red Cross and the American YMCA organizations. In that one case of the Chateau Thierry refugees, these American societies repaid their American subscribers for the sacrifices they made to support them. Indeed, without the help of this American agency, I can easily imagine that the French capital, overwhelmed and crushed under the burden and horror of these calamities, would long since have abandoned all hope, and riots and disorders would have prostrated the authorities in control of the nation. Thousands of refugees swarmed throughout a more or less demoralized Paris. They had no money, no food, no idea of where they wanted to go. The spirit was gone from their bodies. Only the call of hunger served to remind them that they still must live. Preparations were immediately made to care for this new demand upon the American charitable organizations. It was a very critical period of the war. Every available soldier was at the front, and these must have the undivided attention of the supply officers, the commissary department, and government authorities. Refugees were of no consequence towards winning the war. They deserved pity, but could not be permitted to divert the attention of the defenders of a nation. How dangerous this subtle menace might have been will never be known, for the American Red Cross threw itself into the situation and cared for this increasing army of unfed in Paris. Had they been neglected a day or two longer, such riots might have been started in Paris as would have demoralized the whole system of the French organization. The secret of their success was undoubtedly due to the elasticity and absence of red tape in their organization. But whatever it may have been, the fact that the American Red Cross did successfully feed and clothe these bedraggled thousands was in itself a marvel, and made me appreciate how valuable an asset our Red Cross Society was and is in wartime. At the aerodromes and at other military camps all along the front, I had abundant opportunities to appreciate this unofficial, or rather unmilitary, aid that was given to the soldiers by these organizations. At our group aerodrome, the Red Cross later established a small club room for the pilots and officers. Here hot chocolate and toast was served in the afternoon, and a cheery fire was always found to tempt us out of the mud and rain for a few minutes of recreation. Card tables and writing tables were there, and a piano and phonograph, together with all the old magazines that were sent over by American readers, whiled away many a dud afternoon, which must have otherwise been spent in more or less solitary confinement within a dripping billet. The YMCA authorities provided in a similar way for the enlisted men. Candy, tobacco, and toilet articles were provided at these places at a lower figure than they would have cost at home.